Mandalorian Episode 8, Chapter 24, The Return. We continue things off with Din's capture as he's hauled off by two armored commandos, but unsurprisingly, this doesn't last for too long as Din is able to almost free himself. Which, with the last minute help from Grogu of course, he does and is set free and loose inside Gideon's base. Now, why Gideon even needed to keep Din alive as a prisoner in the first place, or how Grogu knew exactly where Din was and teleported right there, we don't know and will really never know. Of course, we're not meant to think too much into the writing here and just go with the flow. And well, I can't really do that, so just like episode 7, the finale kinda starts on a bad note, at least for me. Meanwhile, Bo-Katan and the rest of the Mandos inside the base make their escape relatively easily. It's then here that Din contacts Bo and lets her know that he's staying in the base and plans to confront Gideon. Strangely, Bo doesn't even try to talk him out of it, knowing how well packed the base is with Imperials, but rather wishes him good luck, and she herself departs with the Mandos to a nearby underground garden. And there we learn that the scavenger Mandos have been planting different gardens apparently around the planet. And presumably that's how they've been fed this entire time, which, okay, cool. Glad I was wrong about them eating alamites to survive. They're all now just really vegan Mandos. Another thing I was also wrong about was, well, Axe Woves and his attempt to get reinforcements. Which, surprisingly, he manages to fly all the way through the planet's atmosphere and then inside the light cruiser, warning all of the Mandos there to retreat to the dropships as he remains to man the cruiser alone. Definitely did not see that coming, especially given how this season has shown us that Mandos do run out of jet fuel relatively quickly. So how Axe had enough to fly himself all the way to space? Yeah, that's a head scratcher for sure. Back in the underground base, Gideon turns down an offer to send troops to go after Din, who's currently wandering around the base along with Grogu at his leisure. And I have to say, I did not expect such a casual response from Gideon here, especially since, you know, he's got some very sensitive project going on. And if you were him, you'd hate for Din to come across it and ruin it all for you. Hindsight's 20/20, but I'm sure Gideon would have loved to have Krennic by his side here at this moment.
Are we blind? Deploy the garrison! Move!
With the help of R5 arriving down and accessing the network terminal, Din manages to download the schematic of the base and comes up with a plan to take out Gideon once and for all. And it's at this point where we get a thrilling sequence with Din taking on two armored commando guards one at a time, as R5 each time unlocks the next laser gate once Din is ready for the so-called next wave. I thought this was done really well, as not only is R5 involved, to which it also has a humorous little scene with this mouse droid patrol that did give me a chuckle. It was funny. But it was so great to have Din being a badass again and seeing his hand-to-hand combat skills at their full potential, as he wipes the floor with each phase of commandos, all to make his way to Gideon's cloning room. And well, yeah, like I said in my last review, we knew Gideon's cloning project had zero to do with Snoke and Palpatine, and this only solidified it by showing us he actually was growing clones of himself, but with Force powers. As expected, Din shuts down Gideon's little cloning party, killing all of the clones in the process, and only angering Gideon. Which, yeah, bet he was regretting at this moment not deploying the garrison just before on Din and Grogu, eh? With all of the Mandos and the Gauntlet starfighters as they descend to the planet, at the same time, Gideon's fleet that he ordered to attack in the last episode ascends to barrage the light cruiser, facing little to practically no resistance as Axe, still alone in the cruiser, attempts to hold them off. Really cool looking scene as these dogfights usually are, although I was surprised to see the light cruiser take instant damage. As where are its shields? Because of this, I can only assume Axe shut them off on purpose, which, if that's the case, then I'll explain why I didn't like this decision later. On the ground, Bo is alerted by the armorer that her reinforcements have arrived, then having her announce to all of the Mandos that the time is now to put all their forces together and retake Mandalore, as Bo leads everyone to assault Gideon's underground base, with Bo charging first head-on, rallying everyone behind her with her darksaber like a true leader. And I don't know about you, I got a bit emotional during this sequence, which says a lot, as the last time I felt like that was the Mando Season 2 finale and the Andor prison break. So after the season we've been having in The Mandalorian now, I really did not expect to feel like this again. But hey, here we are. And just seeing all the different Mandos come together, Bo alongside the armorer as they all kick some Imperial butt, it's some extremely epic imagery. Something that while it would be cool to see in animation, sure, it's an entirely different feeling to see in live action. With all of the CGI here being insanely well done, and that's impressive on its own account, as I gave Kenobi flack for having bad character CGI. Heck, even Mando Season 2, the Boba Fett episode, was a culprit at this as well, but this scene and episode, just wow, I was blown away. The production level here is movie quality and I loved every second of it. As for Din, he encounters Gideon, who gives a cartoony villain monologue about his plans for world domination with his Force-enabled clones, which is interesting of how darn convinced he is, as they were never really finished, so how would he know that they actually do have the Force anyway? Oh yeah, that's why, copium. Din then takes on Gideon in a 1v1, which, while a valiant effort, he doesn't really stand much of a chance given Gideon's Dark Trooper enhanced armor that gives him super strength. Then to top things off, the Praetorian guards show up to gang up on Din. And if I'm being honest here, realistically, they should have killed Din off right here. As for the most part, two of them just stand around staring at him while the third is holding him down to the floor. Which is unusual, as we saw with the Paz fight and how quick they were to impale him in different parts of his body. Yet here they're just standing around being like, wait, what do we do? He's got plot armor. That aside, Grogu comes in his IG-12 suit and distracts the guards, which you legitimately do get worried for Grogu at this moment, as you know he stands no chance against them in what is essentially his glorified baby stroller. But the second he's out of it and hopping about in the room while the guards struggle to even land a touch on him, then well, things do admittedly get a bit goofy at this point. But fortunately not for long, as Bo arrives to help Din out, as she decides to 1v1 Gideon herself, so Din can go and help Grogu out. Which he does, and he does a pretty darn good job at it, taking out all three Praetorian guards who, well, as you guessed it, also have apparently Beskar armor on. Because why not, right? You get Beskar, you get Beskar, everyone in Gideon's army gets Beskar now. Meanwhile, Bo finds herself having issues going toe-to-toe with Gideon alone, where he even ends up crushing the Darksaber. I found this a bit bizarre, as Gideon was practically, obsessed with regaining the Darksaber back, so him breaking it did not make too much sense. Maybe if they threw a line in there with him saying that he's changed his mind and he doesn't need it anymore, as the Darksaber is like for the weak or something like that, but no, nothing like that. Although I'm curious to see what ramifications will come next within the Mandalorian culture, if any, from their sacred darksaber having now been damaged. Unless, of course, someone like the Armorer steps up and could maybe repair it, then probably not much. With the Praetorian guards dead, Din returns to give Bo a helping hand, and even then, the odds still favor Gideon. That is, until everyone starts evacuating due to Axe maneuvering the falling flaming light cruiser from space straight into the base. And it seems this is why Axe turned off the shields in the cruiser, as he wanted it to be damaged as fast as possible in order to ram it into Gideon's base. Which, okay, but at this point this seems somewhat pointless in my opinion, as all the Imperials are already defeated at this point with only Gideon left standing, and besides, with Bo's Mando army being all there and taking him on, they would had won and then have the base all for themselves. I mean, heck, if Axe kept the shields on too, they would had still also have a light cruiser to boot as well. So obviously I didn't like this decision, as it really was just the episode's way to give us a grand explosion at the very end, which, while was not necessary, I gotta admit it was still cool to see. And it's because of this that Gideon is consumed by the Inferno, while Grogu uses the Force to create a Force bubble, saving him, Din, and Bo. With Gideon and the Empire's presence on the planet now gone, the Mandalorians reclaim Mandalore for themselves, and once again, going back to my previous point, had Axe not destroyed the Imperial base for absolutely no reason at all, I'm sure they would have been able to use it as a place to live in while they rebuild the planet. As, come on, who wouldn't want to live in a high-tech base that has a living quarters, food, and other resources? As instead now, they gotta live in the rubble of the ruins of Mandalore. Fun. Also, is it just me, but what happened to Gideon's fleet? Like, after they took out the light cruiser, did they all just disappear or something like that? Or maybe the writers simply forgot about them, which is also a likely possibility and would not surprise me at all at this point. Anyway, Din ends up officially adopting Grogu as his son, with the Armorer deciding to name him Din Grogu. Which, let me tell ya, is strange, as shouldn't he be called Grogu Jaren, given that Jaren is Din's surname? I mean, it'd be like if Boba Fett was, for example, called Jango Boba instead. It just doesn't make any sense if you think about it, even for a second. Weird. Anywho, the two later fly to Adelphi to meet with Carson Teva, where Din offers up his services to the New Republic, all in return for a scrapped IG head that Grogu spots in the bar. They then take this head and travel back to Navarro, where Greef gives Din a deed to a new cabin on the outskirts of town that he's been talking about this entire time, saying that Din and Grogu can use it between adventures and whatnot. And in return, Din gifts the town a rebuilt and reprogrammed IG-11, who will now serve as the new Marshal of Navarro. Not only am I disappointed that IG-11 did end up coming back, making his sacrifice in Season 1 feel less impactful now, but also, how did Din end up finding an IG memory circuit that he was searching for before, considering how rare they are and all? Seems like that's suddenly no longer an issue and they simply hand-waved that whole plotline away. And as for Greef's gift to Din, it seems kinda small in my opinion, as I don't know about you, but if I end up saving your entire planet from a pirate attack, then I'd expect much more in return than some measly little cabin like this. Oh, and let's not forget about the cartoony ending that we do get here too.
That's all, folks.
My one-sentence review of this episode is that it's flawed and rushed, but still very much epic. Yes, it had issues. It was also incredibly short, and that's why it felt so rushed. But despite everything, it did feel somewhat satisfying for what it was. Now, it is a shame that they completely glossed over the whole supposed spy thing, because as it turns out, neither the scavenger Mandos, Axe, Casca, or even the Armorer were spies like everyone theorized. So either Jon Favreau forgot about this, or the episode was so rushed that there simply wasn't enough time to delve into this, and they may revisit it in season 4, who knows. And speaking about the Mandos, I'm quite surprised that through this whole entire epic battle, literally no one of importance on the Mandalorian side dies. With the exception of Paz, of course, but even then, he didn't even need to die and chose to sacrifice himself just for the heck of it, as I pointed out in the last review. So that kinda made the whole war for Mandalore seem somewhat underwhelming. That, and we as well learned very little of Gideon too, especially on why he chose to have horns on his helmet, which was a bit of a bummer, as I was hoping for somewhat of a bombshell to drop with him revealing on why he went with that particular aesthetic. But on the other hand, it also felt so good to have an episode be mainly focused around Din and Grogu again. And not only that, but have them actually do something cool rather than be a sidekick and prop for Bo. In addition to this, the production value of the episode alone was absolutely bonkers, practically movie quality, and I think that adds a lot to the epic factor found in this episode. But having said that, I figure considering how poor most of this season has been, then they really had to go all out and deliver something epic right at the end. Because as I stated before, this season overall has been the weakest thus far. And having 2 great episodes right at the end does not excuse the lower level of quality that the rest of season 3 was. So I like to think that they take all of the feedback from this season and come back strong with season 4. As season 3 had way too many issues with its clunky writing and meandering plot. And I have no doubt that was the result of them also trying to squeeze in elements from the cancelled Rangers of the New Republic show into this season, which proved to be not the greatest idea. Fortunately, the great finale that we did get here hints at plans to go back to the basics in season 4, and well, I'm all for it. And that was my take on this episode of The Mandalorian. Let me know what you all thought about the episode in the comments below, and if you haven't already, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.